All right. Now, Avram Avinu leaves Egypt. So we're on Perek Yud Gimel, Pasuk Gimel. He leaves Egypt, and he's got a lot of money with him. And we're on page 58, Perek Yud Gimel. Vayal Avram Mimitzrayim, 6 lines to the top. Vayal Avram Mimitzrayim, hu v'ishto, v'chol asher lo, v'lot imo hanegba. Avram goes from Egypt, he and his wife and everything that he has, and Lot is with him. Ve'Avraham koved me'od, ba'mikne, ba'kesef, u'vazahav. Avram has cattle, he has silver, he has gold, he has a tremendous amount that he got in exchange for Sarah. And he bought servants with it. And again, this is Maisa Avos Simin Labanim, that this is a prelude to what's going to happen to the Jewish people. They'll be taken captive, just like Sarah is taken captive. They'll be captured by the Egyptians, and the Egyptians will then suffer plagues. They're going to get struck. The Jewish people will leave, and now they're going to leave with wealth. And Avram and Sarah leave with a tremendous amount of wealth. More than that, Sarah remains untainted in Egypt. That means that Sarah herself was in a situation of test. You know, if the Egyptian king says something, you can't just refuse him. It's a test for her as well. She remained pure, and since she remained pure, that merit was a merit for the Jewish women who were in Egypt. The Egyptians did not violate the Jewish women all those years they were in Egypt. And even the Jewish men were not immoral in Egypt. They had trouble, they struggled with idols, but they were not immoral. So Avram and Sarah are really setting the stage. They're planting the seeds for what's going to happen to the Jewish people. Then it says in Pasuk Gimel, this is the one we want to get to for right now. Vayelech lemasa'ov, he went on his journeys, minegev ve'ad Beisel, ad hamokom asher haya shamalo batchila bein Beisel uvein ha'oi. He retraced his steps. He goes back to where he originally was, following the same route. Now take a look at Rashi over here. Rashi says, Vayelech lemasa'ov, it's the right column, 4 lines from the bottom. Kishachazar mimitzrayim le'eretz Canaan, when he went from Egypt back to the land of Canaan, right column, 4 lines from the bottom. Hayaholech v'lon be'achsanios, he stayed in the same hostels, the same hotels, hostels. Shalon bahem b'halichasa le'mitzrayim. He stayed in the same hostels on his way down. Limedcha derech eretz. Torah is teaching you proper behavior here. Shelo yeshana adam me'achsania shelo. Person should not change his host. Number 1. Davar acher, there's another idea here. B'chazaroso para hakafosav, on the way back he paid off his debts. So why did Avram Avinu go to the same, on the way down to Egypt, he stayed at various hostels on the way. I guess that's, when he traveled from Israel, he had to stay somewhere, so he went into these hostels. So it says on the way back, he didn't change his host on the way back. Number 1. Number 2, on the way back, he paid off his debts. So there's several very, very big lessons here. Lesson number 1 is that it's actually brought down in the Gemara. Let's say you visit a town, and it's a small town. And nowadays, if you go to a big city, that doesn't apply as much because cities are so big. But let's say you go to a certain neighborhood, and you always go to the same neighborhood. Every time you go to Denver, you go to the same neighborhood. It's a small enough town; it's all one neighborhood anyway. But let's say you go you go to the same neighborhood, so you don't change your host. You go to the same host, assuming they want you. Why? Because if you go to a different host, so then if you go to the second time you're there, people know you're in town and you didn't go to the first host. Like, what was wrong with that first host? What was wrong with the first guy that you didn't want to go there back there? Something was wrong. The food wasn't good. They didn't treat you nicely. In other words, it makes him look bad. And therefore it is proper derech eretz. And again, it depends on circumstances, where you are, what city it is, and where you say. But certainly, if you normally stay by certain people on a block, every time you visit Flatbush, you go to certain people, and then the next time you're there, you stay with other neighbors down the block. Right? Why aren't you staying with us? Why did you go? And the more prominent the person it is, The more prominent the person is, the more extreme it is. Because let's say there's a big Rosh Yeshiva who comes to visit and he stays by. Everybody has the honor of it. It's a fight to have him to be the host, and he stays by one host one time. The next time he goes somewhere else. So what was wrong with the last time? So it's proper derech is not to change your host. So Avraham Avinu, if you stayed in one hostel, and the next time he stays in a different hostel, you can ruin this guy's business. So Avraham Avinu goes back. The first thing that the Torah teaches you, number one. Number two, one of the Mefarshim says over here that, well, what kind of hostels did you think he stayed at on the way down to Egypt? He probably stayed at some cheap motel. On the way back, he's a wealthy man with gold and silver. He gets to stay at all the 5-star hotels now. They go, no, where does he go? He goes to the same, he doesn't upgrade. He doesn't upgrade. A person should learn in life, that's a lesson, just because you have money doesn't mean you have to change your lifestyle. Warren Buffett, I think, drives the same car he's been driving, like a face, he's not driving a Lamborghini, and he doesn't drive he doesn't drive a Mercedes, he doesn't drive, anything fancy. A very, like a Chevy Caprice or something that he's been driving all these years. Okay, it's easy to do that when considering you could buy the entire company. So then it's fun to make a point. He also doesn't have a paper delivered to his house. You know that? Warren Buffett buys the daily paper. He says, why should I waste money on a delivery? Okay, that's a lot of fun when you could buy the entire newspaper, right? So then you can make a point. Some people like to make a point. But there's this idea of it's dangerous to upgrade your lifestyle. What if you get used to the new lifestyle? First of all, when you upgrade, then people look at you. People are giving you, well, look at this guy driving around. Why does the guy drive such a fancy car? It causes jealousy, which is never healthy for a person, number one. And number two, it conditions the person for a higher lifestyle. I get used to a higher lifestyle. When I get used to a higher lifestyle, and what if you lose your money? Then you're in trouble. Because now I'm used to a certain lifestyle and I haven't got the money, I can't afford it anymore. It's not healthy. A person could live very modestly. You have money, great, you have money, use your money properly. You're allowed to live well. But you don't, to go and start staying at fancier hotels, it's a danger. So that's why it says he stayed, that's one of the lessons why he stayed at the hostel. Then there's a second lesson here. On the way back, he paid off his debts. Now, there are two lessons here. What does it mean he paid off his debts? Why does he have debts at all? Why is he going back to these hostels to pay? What kind of debts is he going to pay off? So, we could assume, and one of the Mefarshim, it's not my idea, one of the Mefarshim says, well, on the way down to Egypt, he didn't have any money. He was a poor wanderer. And he walks into this place, and he says, could you put us up? And they put him up. He says, I'm good for the money. I'll get you on the way back from Egypt. Now, I want to ask you a question. Some guy, some wayfarer, stops off with a gorgeous wife, and he's on his way down to Egypt. He says, don't worry, I'll catch you on the flip-flop. I'm good for it. What's your reaction? A, I don't care where you're going. I'm not putting you up for free. I don't know you. I don't know you from Adam. Why would I let you stay here for free? I don't know you from a hole in the wall. Number one. Number two, you're going to Egypt with her? Maybe she's coming back. You ain't coming back, right? I mean, why would anybody trust him? Why would anybody give? And forget Egypt. Forget the threat. Why would a guy comes in? I say, you don't know who the guy is. He says, yeah, I'll pay you back on the way. I'll pay you on the way back. Why would you trust him? What's the answer? What's the answer? The answer is that certain people that you meet in life, I've met certain people where my first reaction is, no matter what happens, I will never lend this guy money. That's my first impression. There are other people that if you would meet them the first time, if you met Reb Moshe Feinstein the first time without knowing who he was, and he said to you, listen, I need to borrow some money, but I'll pay you back, I'd lend him money. Him I trust. Why? Because he looks like somebody you could trust. Avram Avinu is such a person that a hostile a proprietor somewhere in the desert between Israel, the Sinai desert, on the way between Israel and Egypt, who's got some sort of hostel, this guy, I trust him. And that means it's our job in life to make ourselves into that sort of person. We're people who meet us. The impression we make, whether or not they're going to lend you money, the impression people should make, we should be always making a positive impression. People should say, wow, if that's what a frum Jew is, then that almost every secular Jew in Israel who's anti-religious, who has met and had a pleasant interaction, his reaction is, if all Haredis were like you, then they'd be okay. Why do they say that? Because they've never met any other Haredis. How many have they met? They've only seen what they've been fed in the news, that they think the Haredis just throw stones at anything that moves. That's their impression of Haredi, especially, and on Shabbos twice as hard. That's their impression. You know how many guys have been said, that they've said, boy, if all the frum people were like you, they'd be okay. Well, how many frum people do you know? How many frum people have you met? That's our job. Our job is to turn ourselves into that sort of person. I'll tell you a story, man. There was a guy in Chicago, a yeshiva guy in Chicago. These yeshiva guys decided to go on a road trip. So they went to a truck rental. What do you call it? What are those things? SUV? What do they call that? It's one of these campers. I don't know what it is. They needed to rent it. It was on the outskirts, somewhere in some small town on the outskirts, some kind of rednecky town on the outskirts of Chicago. So they went in there. We're the only place that was available. So they go in, and the guy says to them, okay, you need 2 or 3 pieces of identification for the thing. So this bacher says to him, well, I don't. I only have this card. He says, well, you need another one. He says, I don't have one. So the guy looks at him for a second. He goes, roll up your sleeve. He says, roll up your sleeve. So the bacher rolls up his sleeve. He says, oh, you got those marks on your arm, the tefillin marks. He says, you got those marks on your arm. Okay, you're good. I don't need another piece of identification. Right? I want to tell you something. When I heard this story, I was very impressed. It's a beautiful story. Gorgeous, a beautiful story. You know what? It could also have been roll up your arm. Oh, you got those marks on your arm. Forget it. I ain't renting you with anything. And the last time I rented a guy like that, I got sued. I never got it back. He took it. He got it. That's what it could go either way because it's a two-edged sword over here. So we want to be that sort of person. We want to be the person who, when you roll back your sleeves, that's the impression that we make, right? For everybody in the world, especially, by the way, more for Jews than anybody else. There's a big mistake. People think Kiddush Hashem is when Goyim are impressed with us. That's nice. That's not the main Kiddush. The main Kiddush Hashem is when other Jews are impressed with us. The Pasuk says, "V'nikdashti b'sachva." It's a very common mistake. It's a very common mistake that people think that the main Kiddush Hashem is in front of Goyim. And it's not true. When we do something in front of Goyim, often Rabbi Victor Miller says, you know why we like doing it in front of Goyim? So we can say, ha, we're not like you. Not because we're worried about Hashem. It's because we want to show, see, we're better than you. We're not like you. We do this. The main Kiddush Hashem is that Jews, secular Jews, should see that a Torah Jew is a good person. That's the biggest Kiddush Hashem we can make. What are you going to ask, Mayor?
I just want to say that it's the same way with the Goyim. Like they say, you're a Jew, and if all the Jews would be like you, and you ask them, how many Jews do you know?
That's right.
They say, only you.
That's right.
So it's the same, but
it's the same, but we care. But people, it's a mistake. It's a different energy. People think that's the main Kiddush Hashem. It's not. The main Kiddush Hashem is in front of Jews. The biggest Kiddush Hashem is that you should go to shul and not talk in davening, and people say, hey, look at that. There's a guy. At least one guy in shul doesn't talk during davening. That's the biggest Kiddush Hashem. That's a Kiddush Hashem. That's one. Now there's another idea here. The other idea is, he paid off his debts. Now, one of the commentaries says it's tongue-in-cheek, but there's a lot to it. Avram Avinu comes to the land of Israel. Remember, everybody said, hey, where are you going? Because the Lord told me to go. And it's me and the Lord. Imagine what they were saying when he got there and he's on his way to, where are you going, Abe? Well, you're going to Egypt. What happened? Famine, huh? Guess the Lord ain't with you, huh? Good luck in Egypt. We'll see you in Egypt. See you on the way back from Egypt, and all of a sudden, Avram comes back from Egypt, and he's alive, he's healthy, and he's wealthy. He's got to go back to some of these people. He's got some debts to pay. Oh, hi. Oh. I got some payback here, right? But it's different than the way you or me would do it. Because if you or me were doing it, it would be payback for the sake of payback. For Avram Avinu, it's because he wants them to see, there is a Ribono Shalom in the world. Because he was a little better than I was. If it would be me, I would make sure to come in and pull up in my Lamborghini. my brand new Lamborghini, which the Lord gave me. Yeah, with notice some bling I got over here, gold. I'd make sure that the guy, that's how I would do it, because I'm not Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu's payback is because I don't want, for the sake of Hashem's honor, I don't want you thinking by God. Now, you notice we say in the Shema Esrei every day, Shema Koleinu, Ala Tzadikim ve'ala Chasidim ve'al Ziknei Amcha Beis Yisrael Pleitas ve'vagir Etzek ve'leinu, Yibun Rachameh Makenu, v'seim Chalkenu im Alembo, v'lo nevosh ki v'cho v'tochnu. May we not be put to shame, for we have placed our trust in you. V'lo nevosh ki v'cho v'tochnu. What does that mean? What do you think of when you say those words? May we not be put to shame because we have placed our trust in you. So on one hand, we're saying, let us not be put to shame. We don't deserve to be put to shame, because at the end of the day, we've placed our trust in you, Hashem, so we deserve not to be put to shame, because we've trusted you. There's another pshat. V'lo nevosh, let us not be put to shame, let us not look bad for having trusted in you. That people will go, oh yeah, you trust in your Lord. If that's the case, so how come you're broke? So on the one hand, we're asking, listen, Ribono Shel Olam, we've trusted in you, and if we trust you, we got nobody else. So please, we're totally dependent on you. That's on a one-on-one level. But what about other people? What do they think of us for trusting in Hashem? Now, you're doing all that davening, guys. So if you're with all that davening, so how come you're still unemployed? Please, Ribono Shel Olam, it's embarrassing for me. I trusted in you. People see that I trust in you, and this is what it looks like. V'lo nevosh, let us not be put to shame for trusting in you. Let us not look bad that we put our trust in you. Let us not look bad to other people. Besides you understand. So Avram Avinu says, listen, I trusted in Ribono Shel Olam. I got some debts to pay off. Okay. Now, take a look at Pasuk Hey. V'gam leLot. Lot is one of the most intriguing personalities in history. Lot is intriguing. First of all, what does the name Lot mean? Lot means from the word palit. He's a refugee. He escaped. Lot's a great escaper. He escaped from Egypt with Avram Avinu. And ultimately, where's he going to escape from? He's going to escape from Sodom when it's overturned. He's a survivor. Right? Yeah, that's a big word nowadays. Lot's a survivor. Right? We'll even find in the war, it says, Vayovo hapolit. The escaper, the survivor, comes to tell Avram Avinu that Lot was kidnapped, but it comes from the same root, Lot. He is really a remarkable person. He has a very complex personality. On the one hand, he follows Avram Avinu out originally. He goes with Avram Avinu because he felt, hey, this Avram Avinu has got his act together. I want to stick with Avram Avinu. And he goes down to Egypt with Avram Avinu, and then he's going to get credit later on. What's his merit of being saved from Sodom? He kept his mouth shut. Avram Avinu goes to Egypt, and he says, she's my sister. And we see later on that Lot escapes. Hashem remembers Avram. Take a look ahead. I'll show you the pasuk inside. Take a look at in Parsha Vayera. Okay? On pasuk Chaf Vav. No. Pasuk Chaf Tes, page 88. Vayehi, 4 lines from the bottom. Watch this. Vayehi b'shaches Elokim esorea kikar, when God destroyed these cities. Now watch the next structure. Vayizkar Elokim es Avram, God remembers Avraham. Vayishalach es Lot mitocha afecha, and he saves Lot. He sends Lot. I understand that. Why did it say he remembers Avram, so he sends Lot? It should say he remembered Lot, so he saved Lot. Why does it say he remembered Avram, so he saved Lot? Doesn't make any sense. So look what Rashi says. Your name is again? Your name? Sam. So Sam, this is what Sam said very correctly. Take a look at Rashi. Pasuk Chav Tes, where is it? Left column, last line. Vayizkar Elokim es Avram, ma'u zechiraso shel Avram. What does it mean he remembered Avram? Alot Nizkar. He remembered regarding Lot. Shehaya Lot Yodea Shesara Ishto Shel Avram. Lot knew that Sarah was his wife. Vishama Shama Avram b'Mitzrayim al Sarah Achosi. He heard there's my sister. V'lo Gila Davar. He didn't think. He didn't tell them. He didn't rat out Avram Avinu. I mean, you know, that's why you're so wonderful. That's why you deserve to be saved. I mean, you got to be. I mean, who's the worst kid in school? A snitcher. I mean, nobody likes a snitcher. What? Lot didn't snitch. Okay, so Lot didn't snitch. Therefore, he deserved to be saved. I mean, you got to be a real jerk to snitch, right? Well, that's a merit for Lot. Does that bother you? So what is this Lot? And he doesn't snitch. Ooh, terrific, marvelous. What a tzaddik. He didn't snitch. I once snitched on a guy. My parents were so upset with me. My mother was upset with me for snitching. I snitched. I didn't like the guy. And the guy I didn't like was 5th grade. I didn't like the guy. And he snuck out of class. He snuck out of class to get a drink without asking. He snuck out and snuck in, and I snitched on him. And my mother was so upset with me for snitching, which she should have been. Right? you know. So Lot was a snitcher. He wasn't a snitcher. Ooh, what a tzaddik! Why? What happened over here? Listen carefully. What did Avram Avinu say about Sarah? He said she's my sister. And what did they give him?
Money.
Lot of it. Lots of it. And Lot's standing there. You know what Lot's thinking to himself? Hey, but she's really my sister. Because she was Lot's sister. So Lot sees his brother-in-law lie, say that it's his sister, get money for it, and Lot doesn't say a word. My brother told me, that's Lot's merit. That you didn't snitch. You're a lowlife if you snitch. But you were willing to forfeit money. Now you got a merit. That's big stuff. You gave up the money that you were really entitled to because it's your sister. And you gave that up. So Lot is this interesting character over here. So it says, V'gam Lot ha'holech es Avram hayatzonu bakar ve'olim. That's his downfall. Lot passed the test of poverty. Isn't it interesting? He went with Avram Avinu from Ur Kasdim. They didn't have anything. And he was willing to abandon whatever he was doing in Ur Kasdim or in Haran, went with Avram Avinu, went down to Egypt, stick with Avram Avinu all the way, and it's in state of poverty. He passed the test of poverty. Where does he fail? Test of wealth. Oh, this is where the trouble starts. He got rich. Says the Torah, V'gam Lot ha'holech es Avram hayatzonu bakar ve'olim. Ooh, he got rich too. And Rashi says, what got him rich? Because he had the merit of being with Avram Avinu. They had the blessing of being Avram Avinu that got him rich. Well, Lot misread the map. Lot doesn't realize that's the merit of Avram Avinu. So at that point, the fighting starts. Because they say the test of wealth is more difficult than the test of poverty. That's what they say. I don't know who they is, but what do we say? Bring it on. Give me the test. Test me! I once heard about a lawyer. There was these lawyers. There's a lawyer. These guys were fishing. One of the guys, a true story. It was a news item. These guys were fishing. And they were on a lake, and there was a what do you call it, a lightning storm. And one of the lawyers stood up. This lawyer stood up in the boat. He said, "Come on, Lord, if you're out there, strike me down with lightning right now." Kaboom! He got hit, and he was gone. So sometimes we say, "Test me, come on, Lord, test me." Which test you? Test me with poverty. No, nobody says that. Nobody wants to be tested with poverty. Do you know that there's a medrash that says if you took all of life's suffering and you put it on one side of the scale, and you put poverty on the other side of the scale, it would weigh it down? Because when a person's poor, he suffers everywhere. He can't afford the right medication. He can't afford shoes for his kids. He can't afford. It's on every part of his life. Fighting in the home, his wife's upset with him. He feels like a failure. Everybody, poverty, unless he's learning in Kollel. You're learning in Kollel, he's not a failure. He took it on. He took it on because that's his sacrifice for learning it. But a guy who's trying to make money and he can't make money and he's poor, so he's never succeeded is everything. Everything bad. Everything bad. Most things in life, not everything, but most problems in life could be taken care of with money. Most problems. Not all, but most. Most problems could take care of. A lot could be done with money. But it's a more difficult test. Because as a person, suffering, you suffer much more with poverty. I told you, somebody once said to me, having money doesn't make you, being rich doesn't make you happy. I said, yeah, but being poor doesn't make you happy either. So if I'm going to be unhappy, I'd rather be unhappy with money than without money. Right? But it's a bigger test. Because what happens to you as a person? What happens to your ego? What happens to your drives? What happens to your desires? And now you're just feeding yourself constantly. Lot is blessed. Money is not a good, again, like anything else. We even talk about Hashem blessed. Do you know that Gemara says that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi honored wealthy people? And Rabbi Akiva would honor wealthy people? Do you know why? Because if a guy's wealthy, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has blessed him. He's given him blessing. What you do with the blessing is up to you. You could do a lot of good things with money. You could also do a lot of bad things with money. And you could do a lot of good things and still be bad because you're a big shot because you're giving away your money. You have to realize it's only I heard about a guy who was sitting in a restaurant. He was talking about how much money he had. It wasn't Donald Trump. It was somebody else. He was sitting in a restaurant talking about, I am so rich. I am so rich. There's no way my money could be taken from me. And just then the waiter passed by and he said, yeah, but you could be taken from your money. Right? The guys were in a submarine with their what do you call it? That submarine that imploded. What do they call it? Their thing. Those 5 guys were in a submarine. Weren't 2 or 3 of them were billionaires? Yeah, billionaires, and only billionaires could afford to go down in a submarine. I mean, even if I could afford it, I wouldn't. And I have no interest in being in a submarine down at the bottom of the ocean. I got other things to do, right? But boom, they're taken away from their money. With all that money, and you're taken away from it. So Lot misreads it. He thinks that he got rich on his own. Why did he get rich? Hashem gave him bracha because you stuck with Avram Avinu. And that very bracha is the thing that's now going to cause them to go their separate ways. He fails the test of wealth. So the Torah says they had a dispute, and his shepherds were stealing, and Avram Avinu's shepherds were telling them, no, the land's not yours, and you can't go, and they had all sorts of rationalization. So look what Avram Avinu says to him. V'yomer Avram el Lot, al not tehi meriva beini uvenecha uvein ra uvein recha. Let there not be a fight. Ki anoshim achim anachnu. Let's not fight because we're brothers. Now Rashi over here says something which you're going to put on hold, but I just want you to look what Rashi says over here. It's the left column of Rashi, 5 lines on the bottom. Anoshim achim krovim. We're relatives. Nothing like a good family fight. Let's not fight. Let's not feud. Umedrish Agoda, 5 lines on the bottom, Rashi says, Domim beklaster panim. Avram Avinu and Lot looked alike. Let's not fight because we look alike. What does that mean? Well, I'm better looking than you are, even though we look alike. I'm better looking than you are. Well, what does that mean? Why is Rashi telling us that? We're going to come back to this later. Keep that in storage. Just remember, Avram and Lot look alike. Put that on file. Okay. So Avram says, listen, you got a lot of livestock. Hello, kol ha'aretz pared na me'alai. Let's separate. Im small, you go left, I'll go right. I go right, you go left. Anything bothering you about this? Anything bothering you about this little exchange over here? Very puzzling. Something should be bothering you about this. And this is the first step we see in Avram Avinu. It's a pattern that we see. It's actually the second. It's a pattern in Avram Avinu's behavior. Right? Here's the guy, he's the man who's Mekarev the whole world. He brings in guests, he's drawing people near all over the place. His nephew he tosses away. Why did he try to be Mekarev him? Hey, Lot, guys are stealing over here, guys, you got to do tshuva, let's go, clap a couple of chaitz. Him, he pushes away. Why? That goes against everyone. He's Mekarev the whole world. He's trying to influence people. Don't steal. Don't be involved in idol worship. Don't be involved in human sacrifice. He's influencing a whole world. His own nephew, you go, I'll go. You go this way, I'll go that way. You go that way, I'll go this way. Why does he drive Lot out? So this is again a second in a pattern that we find of Avram Avinu, which we've spoken about in the past. What is Avram Avinu's main midah, by the way? What's his main midah? What's he known for? Chesed. Kindest man in history. Brings in the guests, he lays out a repast for them, slaughters 3 animals so each one could have his own chunk of tongue, if you like tongue, right? That was considered the fanciest cut of meat, right? What's that?
It still is.
It still is? Is because tongue expensive?
Well, the Kobe steak is more expensive or stuff like that.
What is?
Kobe steak is even more expensive.
What's that?
It's like a cows have been treated like very, very.
Oh, the fancy cow. Oh, where they feed them that also, right?
Maybe the tongue of the.
The tongue of the, right, that'll be the old. So tongue is one of those things also, either you love it or you hate it. You know, some people love tongue, some people just can't get past the idea of what it is. Yeah, but it's supposed to be, if you like it, you love it. That's why it's like olives. Yeah, it's like olives. You know, either you like them or you love them. No, very few people are neutral about olives. That's why they say married couples are great. Married couples go out to eat pizza, they're the best. Because one of them always loves the olives, one hates the olives. So one picks the olives off the other. They eat pizza well together. That's the way it works. And they never both love olives. That's very rare. So the pattern that you find is, what do we find? Let's take a look. This is the man of Chesed. He abandons his elderly father. He throws his nephew out of the house. He gets involved in a world war. He throws his son out of the house, Ishmael. And eventually, he commits an act of self-mutilation on himself and his entire family, called Bris Milah. And eventually, he takes a knife to the neck of his second son. He's the Ish Chesed. He's the man of kindness. Right? There's no one in the Torah that we find with a knife and a blade and violence as much as Avram Avinu. And he's the man of kindness. Interesting? What's Yitzchak? Din. Vura, stern, strict, the high school principal into the office, right there, the high school principal. What's Yitzchak's life? His name means laughter. We find him tolerating the wayward son, exactly the opposite of the principal. He tolerates Esav. He's mitzachek as he's entertaining his wife. He gives in to the plishtim even though he was right. Everything the opposite of din. Isn't that remarkable? Everything's the opposite of din. And what's Yaakov? Emes. Emes. Titein emes liYaakov. He deceives his brother, deceives his father, deceives his brother, deceives his father-in-law, deceives everywhere you look. Everywhere is a deception. He's the man of truth. Nobody's involved in con schemes as much as Yaakov Avinu. He's the man of Emes. Isn't that interesting? What's the lesson? The lesson is that the test of the midah, if you're born a softy, you're not an ish chesed, you're just a softy. What test if you really, do you control the midah or the midah controls you? If a guy in the street says, hey brother, can you spare $1? And he's got a rusty needle sticking out of his arm, right? And you say, oh, I'm such a man of chesed, here you go, take $10. Now he could buy 10 doses of heroin for his next week instead of 1. I'm sure it costs more than that. That's not an ish chesed. You're just a softy. You got no spine. The ish chesed is the guy, the test of being chesed is that you can do the opposite when it's necessary. And right now it's necessary to tell in spite of everything you're doing, it's necessary to tell your nephew to get out of the house. We got to go our separate ways. Why? Because Avram Avinu is worried. Lot has money. And he's an influential person. What kind of influence? People with money are influential. Way it goes. People listen to people with money. If Lot is influential, I can't have him around. He can undermine everything I'm doing ideologically. I see who he is. He's a guy who's willing to go and steal. And the worst part is that Lot's got a religious, a justification for what he's doing. Lot figures, listen, I know that God, he's a London. Listen, Lot knows how to learn. Lot learned Baba Kama good. Lord said, well, listen, Hashem promised this land to Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu has no children. I'm the next of kin. I'm going to inherit it all when Avram Avinu dies. So therefore, I may as well I can help myself to the land now. So he's got all sorts of justification for why he's allowed to take it. That's the most guy. I can't have a guy like that around. I can't have him around. He's going to mess up everything because he's not entitled to it right now. Right now it's stealing. And therefore I got to get this guy out of here. So Avram Avinu, therefore he does not even try to change Lot. He feels this, I have to out because he could influence other people. If his shepherds are stealing, well, where did they get that from? They got it from him. When is it that a boy has to be asked to leave a yeshiva? This is also always one of the dilemmas in the mainstream yeshivas. Not Ohr Somayach is a different type of yeshiva. But in the mainstream yeshivas, when do you have to ask a boy to leave the yeshiva? Nobody wants to ask a boy to leave. When? There's one rule, when he's a negative influence on others. What a guy does on his own, that's what yeshivas are for, to teach people not to do averas. But when a person is a negative influence, exactly where that line is also debatable. But where he's agreed to be a negative influence on others, he has to be. There's a famous story. There's a famous story of a certain yeshiva where a boy had to be asked to leave. So the mother of the boy came, and she cried and pleaded with the Rosh Yeshiva to keep the boy in the yeshiva, because she knew if you leave the yeshiva, who knows what's going to happen. And Rosh Yeshiva said, I'm sorry, and he wouldn't give in to the mother. So somebody said to him afterwards, how can you turn down the tears of a Jewish mother? You know what he said? He said, because I kept picturing the tears of the other 200 Jewish mothers if the kid would stay in the yeshiva. It's a tremendous responsibility, but that's the line. He's a negative influence. So what does Lot do? Lot decides to go. And where does Lot go? So you look around. Well, you got choices. You could go to Bnei Brak. You could go live in Bnei Brak, and you could go live in Lakewood, and you could go live in Las Vegas. It's a choice, right? Somehow different results by where you're going to live and raise your kids. So Lot looks around. Where am I going to go? Now Lot could have turned around and said, hey, listen, Uncle Avram, you know what? I'm going to change. Avram would have accepted him at that point. He doesn't show any sort of remorse for his behavior, the behavior of his what do you call it? The behavior of his servants who are stealing, his shepherds. No remorse. What does he do? Vayisa Lot esena vayaris kol kikar hayarden kikula mashke. Wow, he looks out, he sees the entire plains of the Jordan. Wow, it's a very fertile land. So what does he do? Look at the next pasuk. Vayita lo Lot es kol vayivcha Lot kol kikar vayisa Lot mikedem vayipardu ish me'alachiv. And Lot, the next pasuk, Avram Yosef Beretz Canaan v'Lot Yosef Kikar vayehal ad Sodom. Lot manages to. He's got a vast estate, tents, and he sets himself up all the way till he reaches Sodom. Got nowhere else to go. The guy goes, you know what? We're going to go to Las Vegas. And who are the people of Sodom? Ve'anshe Sodom roim v'chatoim l'Hashem me'od. They're grievous sinners. You got nobody else to do. You got nowhere else to go live. Yeah, well, we looked over the country. Denver's a nice place. And Florida's okay. But we really fell in love with Las Vegas. Well, what does that tell you about the person? What does it tell you about the person? There's no accident that Lot is attracted to Sodom. And what is Sodom? The people of Sodom are the most grievous sinners. Man-to-man behavior, man-to-God behavior, they're the worst sinners in history. That's where Lot decides to go. Okay, now, keep that in mind. Now we go to Perek Yud Daled. And we start with the First World War. First World War in history. And the Torah is going to describe a war between the 4 kings and the 5 kings. And what happens in this world war? Who gets involved? Who's going to get involved in this war? Eventually. Lot's going to get kidnapped, and who's going to go rescue him? Avram Avinu. That means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought about an entire world war. For what reason? To get Lot kidnapped, so Avram Avinu could get involved. Why did the kings fight with each other? There was an excuse. What was underlying the entire world war? The Jews. It's all about the Jews. The whole world's at war. Over what? The Jews. At the end of the day, you got Russia, with Hezbollah, and you got China, and you got America, and other. What's it all? What's in the middle of all this tumult? Why do you think the Americans are getting involved here? Why are the Americans getting involved? Huh? Americans sent a couple of what do you call it to Israel now. Why? And they're sending the military. Why is America? Oh, we just all of a sudden they just love matzah, huh? They don't want to make sure the Jews survive because they love matzah crackers, right? And we can't have the Jews annihilated because we got to have matzah. Why do you think the Americans are getting involved? Why?
Interest.
They gave Iran $4 billion.
All right. What interest? What?
Money.
Money, oil, Russia. Yeah, they're getting involved here because their own interests are threatened. Why are their interests threatened? Because Russia's got interests over here, which are opposite of America. So they got to counterbalance the Russians and the Iranians. And who's in the middle of it all? The Jews. Why? Leave us alone, guys. Yeah, can't you fight somewhere else? You can't fight. There's nowhere else in the world to fight. Jews got one sliver of land. There's one sliver of land over here. I mean, the Russians are demolishing the Ukraine. The Ukrainians are demolishing the Russians. The Syrians have been in a civil war for 10 years. The the Hutsis and the Tutsis in Africa are slaughtering each other. You got in Venezuela is like an old west, the Wild West without a control. But where's everybody's focus? On one sliver of land that you can't find on a map. Do you know there was a guy once? Where was he from? Forgot what he was. He thought this guy was. I forgot what the story, the background, but the story was he was once looking at a map. He thought Canada is Israel. He thought Canada is Israel. So somebody said, why? He thought Canada was really Israel. He said, why? He said, look, I looked on a map, and I looked for the biggest countries in the world. I found America, and they're always prominent. They're always in the news. They're prominent. I saw Russia. I saw China. But I've never heard anything about Canada, but I always hear about Israel. So I figured the next biggest landmass must be Israel. I never hear about Canada because Canada is pretty insignificant, right? But I always hear about Israel, but I can't find Israel anywhere on the map. So I figured Canada is Israel. That's what the guy said. Canada, but there's like Russia I know, America I know, China I know, India I know, but what's Canada? No, you're saying Canada. It must be Israel. That was his logic. Right? So you got a world war. We'll see what this world war is about. Just remember that I told you that Rashi, that Avram and Lot look alike. Avram and Lot look alike. That will come back to explain what this world war is really about. Okay.